What is going on, everybody? Welcome to RBS Cinema, where each week we talk about a new movie. This week's movie we talked about Joker.
I'm the Joker, baby!
And before we talk about Joker, my name is Devin, and this is Sam. Today, we're also going to talk about taglines about the movie. And for those of you that don't know what taglines are, they are basically short sentences or words, or just even a single word that will entice you to come and watch the movie that you see on the poster. So, for example, like Avengers, it could say assemble, or Avengers assemble, or this time it's personal, or what have you. But otherwise, pretty much that's what we'll be doing. So, for those of you that are new to the show, what we pretty much do is that we talk about taglines, and then we talk about our favorite parts of the movie, and then we will give our consensus at the end on whether it be a rent, buy, or skip, which is the reason why this is called RBS in the first place, and then talk about what Sam calls as suggestive people instead of wrong people, because pretty much if it's a middle of the road type of movie, we'll talk about low score and a high score on IMDb, and talk about their opinions on the movie and actually expand on them. And then it's pretty much about it. So, but otherwise, how have you been?
I've been doing alright. As well as the weekend.
Good. Yeah, this week has definitely been a little much, for sure. So, let me see. Sorry, I'm pulling up stuff on my laptop. Okay, so without further ado, let's talk about Joker.
Okay, let's go.
It's showtime.
Going to talk about the boring stuff, who starred in it, who directed it, wrote it, all that good stuff, and then afterwards we will talk about the actual movie in depth. So we got Todd Phillips, who directed and wrote it, as well as Scott Silver and Bob Kane, who were also co-writers. We got a few just big people in this, being Joaquin Phoenix, of course, as Joker, got Robert De Niro, and Zazie Beetz. For those of you that don't know who Zazie Beetz is, she is Domino from Deadpool.
Mm-hmm.
So, but yeah, she's really good. I really like her. I also liked her in Atlanta, so give that a watch. If you are so inclined and watching some new stuff. I really liked it, but let's see here. I've only got one tagline for this movie, so it's just put on a happy face.
Pretty much.
That's all that it is. So,
It covers a lot, believe it or not.
yes, it really does. But yeah, otherwise, let's talk about our favorite parts. Don't really have a whole lot with a 2-hour long movie for this, because not really a lot happens. It's mostly shown and also said in dialogue. So, because like a movie like this, there isn't really a whole lot of like favorite bits that I would have. But have you seen the movie before this?
No.
No.
This was my first true watch. So I saw up to the point of the subway scene, and that's where I stopped at a friend's house once.
Gotcha.
But I did like what I saw, and I wanted to continue it. I just never got back to it, and now we got to do it this time. So
Yeah, this is my second time watching it, because I saw it in theaters when it first came out with my wife, and we really liked it. And then I bought it on physical, of course, and then I pretty much didn't go back to watch it, because I feel like I'm kind of like an artistry movie like this. Like, you can appreciate it watching it once, but it's like sometime later you would feel like watching it again. So I feel like for that, it kind of makes it a little better of an experience, because it's like I said earlier, there's not a lot that happens in this movie that's like kind of memorable. There's the big huge scenes that you've seen, like the Joker on the stairwell, like him walking down the stairs and like dancing and stuff, and him just like dancing in the bathroom, or just like dancing in random moments, or it's like towards the end of the movie, which we'll get to, of him at Marv's show, and how he goes like, "Can you introduce me as Joker?" and that whole sequence.
Yeah, with Murray. Yeah.
Yeah. And that was the whole, basically the big huge caveat of the movie, especially for like the trailers and stuff. Because I remember the trailer, and so like those were like the big key moments that you would remember, and like him running around the city and stuff like that about like when stuff happens. But other than that, there really isn't that much that happens in the movie specifically. So, but
Which I think is to its strength, honestly, which is a very rare statement for me to make. Like, usually when something doesn't have as much going on, there isn't really, like you just said, there's nothing to go off of, but this movie ain't really about that. It's more about trying to understand the psyche of what's going on inside Arthur's head.
Yeah, for sure. But let's get into the movie here. So, from the top, basically, going from beginning to end of our favorite bits or favorite parts of the movie. The thing that I liked in the beginning was him flipping the sign of him actually in full clown makeup, just because I just like how bright and vibrant he is, and how yellow the sign is, and how dreary the actual city looks
Compared to him.
Yeah, because I feel like that, and now that I actually mention it, I feel like that as you go throughout the movie, there isn't a whole lot of bright, vibrant colors a whole lot throughout the movie.
Or they're extremely dulled.
Yeah, they're extremely dulled, but
Dirty,
there's times to where
up.
it's very vibrant and bright colors. Like when he's on the Murray show, towards the end of the movie, it's very bright and colorful and all this bunch of stuff, but throughout the course of the movie, it's not. And I feel like that they kind of did that on purpose, because of the fact that when he looks at himself in the world, he thinks of himself as bright and colorful, but at times he doesn't. So I don't know. That just might be me just looking more into
There
it.
is a argument to be said that the most bright, off of what you're saying about brightness and stuff, the brightest part of the movie is probably literally seeing the Joker title screen.
Mm-hmm.
When he's already on the ground at that point, already being beaten up.
Yeah.
So from then on, it doesn't get much brighter than that. It dulls real fast.
Yeah, because then, these kids, they come and then they take a sign and then they beat the crap out of him and they break it. And then later on, he gets pulled into his boss's office and he goes hey, Arthur, I really like you and everything, but you're gonna have to give the guy his sign back. And he goes but didn't you hear? I got jumped, I got beat up, and these kids, they broke the sign. And he goes I don't give a shit, just give him back his sign. And then he just goes why would I take a sign? He goes I don't know, why does anybody do anything? He goes just give it back, otherwise I'm gonna take it out of your pay. And the whole time he's just sitting there just tuning him out, and he's just smiling the whole time. So, and then later on you see him just basically smashing down trash bags in the alleyway. So and then going further in, when he talks to the social worker, I was going to say therapist, but it's a social worker.
Sure, social worker.
Yeah, and he goes is it just me, or is it getting crazier out there? It's I love that line, because it's no, it's definitely getting crazier, because there's no law enforcement, pretty much, because around this time the cops are crooked, so there's some cops that are working under the table for mobsters and stuff like that to keep them
This is
doing their stuff.
pre-Commissioner Gordon level
Yes.
law enforcement.
Well,
definitely.
Commissioner Gordon is still in law enforcement. He's just a police officer.
He's
so he's not a
Lieutenant. He's
detective.
Lieutenant Gordon.
Yeah, he's not Detective Gordon, or he's not Commissioner Gordon. And this is also of course pre-Batman, which is kind of strange, because the Joker, I really my understanding is that he might be just a smidge older than Batman, but he's not that much older than Batman, because they do seem that they're same in age throughout the comics. That's what it seems like, because even in like the comic iterations of Batman, he's not in his like early 20s, because his prime when he just first starts being Batman, like in The Batman with Robert Pattinson, he's only been Batman for a couple of years, and that's in like his early 20s. Prime Batman, I feel like, is either his late 20s or early 30s. And that's pretty much like the depiction of the Batman that we see in like most modern comics, at least, or just in comics in general throughout the board. Um, Sometimes also in movies as well, like Michael Keaton's Batman. I feel like that might have been maybe mid-20s Batman, I think, or
I feel this number of 29 for some weird reason.
yeah, it's like very late
35.
20s. It's like very late 20s, and it's like very early 30s, because then it's like with Ben Affleck's Batman, it's like very much like close to 40s or 50s, because this is when Batman is retired. He's no longer like fighting crime. He's like stopped doing it, and then because of how bad the city has gotten, he feels like that he needs to go back and set some order of things, because like that's what they pulled for Batman v Superman from the comic was the Dark Knight Returns for Batman specifically.
Even his symbol was very much reminiscent of that.
Oh yeah, like I really loved that they pulled that comic story out from that movie. I just don't like that movie a whole lot, just because they threw a bunch of stuff together, because Warner Brothers likes to just go like, let's see if this will stick, because we want to be like Marvel. We want to have the Avengers already like done, and especially with James Gunn, where now he's taking the mantle of DC Studios. Now it's not just going to be his vision, it's going to be, what do I want to do for this hero, like Superman, where it's like, okay, I want to pull from this comic, and then just go off of this. So, because like that's specifically what he's doing with this new DC Studios going forward, is that with this new Superman movie coming out, he's pulling from All-Star Superman, which I heard is a really good comic, which I don't have, which I want to read, but it's supposed to be specifically taken from those comics. And that's what we're seeing in the trailer and what we'll eventually see in the movie. And then he wants to pull from Batman Brave and the Bold as the next movie in the lineup. But now that's been postponed. The Batman with Robert Pattinson has been pushed till next year of 2026, which kind of sucks because it was supposed to come out this year. But I don't know. People are speculating that it's up in the air on whether it is where he wants the Batman to be in his universe or its own separate thing. Because when this movie came out, it was like, okay, where's Batman? It's like, well, Batman's not a thing yet. It's like, okay, well, why not? You can't have the Joker without Batman. It's like Venom without Spider-Man. But, you know, and miraculously, they still managed to pull these movies off without the main character being in it.
And that adds to what is going on in this movie, believe it or not. The vulnerability of what you just said, people are already thinking about before it happens. Before the scene,
Yeah.
if you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, towards the end, yeah.
Brings a chill down your spine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because then you've also got the fact that, like, after the Batman came out, they were like, oh man, is Joaquin Phoenix's Joker going to be a part of it? And he's not. It's its own separate thing, just like this. This is its own separate thing. So, in a way, you could say that this is the multiverse of DC movies. Because you have Robert Pattinson's The Batman as its own separate universe. You have this one as the Joker with Joaquin Phoenix as its own separate universe from Batman. And because this has nothing to do with Batman at all, it's just the origin of Joker. But, you know, some could argue, well, who asked for an origin story of the Joker? So, like, well, his origin is actually really, like, down to earth. Because just like in this movie, he originally wanted to be a stand-up comedian, and then he couldn't do that. He got laughed off stage, and then he got mixed up with some mobsters, and then he goes like, and at the time he did have a girlfriend in the comics, and because like they've done his story numerous different times, and they've always changed it. But the biggest one that is, he wanted to be a stand-up comedian, and then he got in with these mobsters. He became the Red Hood. That isn't like Batman's sidekick Jason Todd being the Red Hood. And then he came face to face with Batman at Ace Chemicals, and then he fell in a vat of acid, or chemicals rather, and then he became the Joker afterwards. And the chemicals messed with his psyche to where now he's just deranged and delusional and crazy. And that's why he has like bleached skin and his hair is dyed green and all this bunch of stuff is just because of that reason. And so like that's why throughout the comics or even different iterations of like movies or TV shows, he always says like, you know, you created me and I created you, so we're basically the same person. So yeah. But anyway, pushing on to the movie. So after that, he's on his way home, and the reason why that I'm going into this is because that I have written down the card explaining his laughing condition, because that's what they decided to do for this iteration of the Joker, was have him have a laughing fit when, you know, like he's scared or he's upset or stressed or whatever. He just has this uncontrollable urge just to laugh.
What, you think that's funny?
And that's basically Joker's synonymous laugh that he has throughout the whole iteration of him. And every source of media is just him laughing uncontrollably. But in this one, it's just more down to earth, like a more specific reason of why he's laughing. It's just because it's a medical condition.
It's the other, think of it as like the other spectrum of what Mark Hamill's voice does.
Yeah.
Mark's is way over the top, which is great. This is probably, in my opinion, the greatest laugh of them all.
Oh yeah, 100%. It's like very distinct to where you can point out who it is and like where it's from.
Whereas this one, like you just said, is more of a down-to-earth reason why it happens. It isn't exaggerated. It's more just an impulse thing. Yeah.
Yeah. But then cut to later on, like that night, he's at home and like sitting down with his mom watching the Murray Show. And I love the fact that when they sit down and they are watching it, that his delusion starts coming through. Because then he starts thinking that he's going to be a part of the show. Like he's in the audience. And then he calls out to Murray that I love you. And then Murray calls out to the audience going like, who said that, pointed him out, like offered him to be on stage and stuff, to like stick around and talk. And that's his delusion. And then when they cut to commercial, he says, you know what, like, I wish that if I had a kid, he would be like you. And like that's what he wants, as a father figure in his life. And it's like, because he never really had a dad. He didn't grow up with a dad. But this whole time, throughout this whole movie, his mom is looking for a letter from Thomas Wayne. And then, which we'll get to eventually, but yeah, the throughout this whole movie, she's like, did we get a letter from Thomas Wayne? Every day he checks the mail and like, there's literally nothing there. And so he goes like, no. And he keeps questioning her, going like, why is this letter so important from Thomas Wayne? And so she goes like, because he wants to take care of us. He wants to see us basically living the life that we want. And this isn't the life that we want. And he would be sickened if he found out this is how we are. And because she really has this connection with him, apparently, because she worked for him for 30 years ago at this point. But like, does he remember her? Yeah, because we later find out that he does. But and again, we'll get to that. But he also says that like he wants to be a stand-up comedian. And so I wrote this down, like, his mom says, why would you want to be a comedian? Don't you need to be funny? I'm just like, oof, that hits hard. just because of the fact that like when you are telling somebody that you really love and care for, of just being like, hey, I want to do this for a living. When it's like, hey, I have this dream that I want to do this. It's like, but don't you kind of have to do this in order to do that?
Don't you have to know what you're doing?
Yeah. It's kind of like, especially like when I was in high school, I wanted to like be on YouTube and be not a YouTube celebrity, but I wanted to do YouTube videos. And like, especially my dad and my uncle, like they didn't really understand at first. They're like, well, why do you want to be on YouTube? And I'm like, well, because like it's something that I really enjoy doing and I watch YouTube a lot, especially now when I'm 30. Shit, I still watch YouTube every single day. Like, but I don't watch just random videos because it's not about that anymore. It's not about a random cat video that you've seen or just like this random meme that you'll come across. Like, no, it's actually more about people making their dreams happen on this platform to push what they want to do. So like Markiplier or Jacksepticeye, where you know like they want to make content and that's all it is, or like PewDiePie or Mr. Beast. So that's all that they want to do is just make content for people that enjoy it, and that's what they love to do. But people just don't understand. Going like, well, no, like you should get an actual job. It's like, no, that is a job. People get paid to be on YouTube, or on Twitch, or whatever. It's like, you know, that's their passion project. Just like this is my passion project, like I've said before. But yeah, I just love the fact that she just goes like, don't you have to be a comedian to be, or don't you have to be funny to be a comedian? So.
But I don't think she has any recollection that she is being hurtful in her statements, and that's what makes it kind of worse too. Is like,
oh yeah, for sure.
like the truth of what she said was from the heart, but she didn't know that it was coming out in the way that it did.
Yeah, because like we haven't really seen him say any jokes or anything like that.
Not yet.
Yeah, not yet. But yeah, like he hasn't really done any comedy or anything like that. So, because like even with the Joker specifically, like he always sees a punchline in everything that he does. Everything. Like, doesn't matter what it is, putting people in danger, he thinks that shit's funny. And that's just how sadistic he really is.
Life isn't a tragedy, life is a comedy.
Mm-hmm. And he actually says that in later on throughout the course of the movie, like towards the end. And then later on he goes back to work and his friend offers him a gun because he goes like, oh, you know, you need to protect yourself. And so he goes like, so here's like a 6-shooter. And like, he basically, you know, like how crazy that the world is out there, you need to protect yourself. And I have it written down in my notes. Starts playing around with gun and accidentally fires it. Because like he's watching a movie on TV and he starts playing around with the gun and he has it loaded, doesn't realize that it's loaded. And he starts pretending to dance and starts like making up the scenario at a club of going like, hey, who are you? And he goes like, Arthur, like talking about the girl and him. And he goes like, oh, like you're really good at dancing. He goes like, I know. He's like, you know who isn't? Him. Shoots a bullet and then he freaks out and then he turns up the volume on the TV and his mom freaks out. She goes like, what's going on? He goes like, nothing, I'm watching an old war movie. So she goes like, well, turn it down. So he goes like, I'm sorry, Mom. Which of course she doesn't know why he's apologizing. He's apologizing for freaking her out.
Dude, gun safety people were losing their minds in this
Oh,
moment of the
100%.
movie.
Because later on he was like trying to devise this plan of shooting himself on the Murray show. So and this time he doesn't have the gun loaded, but he was like trying to devise a way of how he can basically kill himself on national television. Because he goes like, well, I don't really feel like living in this world anymore, so I'm going to do that. And then the other thing too is that like later on for his job, he's at the children's hospital and he's doing like, if you're happy and you know it, And so he stomps his feet, and then at one point the gun falls out of his pants, and so he's kicking it around, and then he looks at the kid and he just goes, shh, and so the kid like mimics him and does that too, and then he gets fired from his job. I just thought it was so funny, and then everybody was just like, why would you bring a gun to a children's hospital? And especially with him, he's trying to justify the reason why that he has the gun, of going like, well, it's a prop. Like, and like his boss just goes like, who the hell brings a gun to a children's hospital, especially for a prop? And he goes like, and he goes like, no, I don't believe you, you're fired.
Honestly, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, there isn't really an argument for this part of the movie.
No, there's really not. There's not really, like, I feel like that if you were to know where you were going, especially at a children's hospital, for one, don't bring the gun, okay? Because it's like, what, are these cancer kids going to beat the shit out of you? Like, they can barely stand up as it is. Like, they're not going to beat the shit out of you, for one, if that's what you're thinking. Two, it's like, okay, if you're worried about on the way there, on the way back, or whatever, literally stash it somewhere. Or at least, like, get a holster or something that is, like, more, less revealing or something. So, but just in general, just don't bring the gun to the children's hospital. So.
Well, it also just shows you just how out of place he really is in the
Oh,
world,
yeah.
in the environment and the world that he lives in.
Mm-hmm.
He's so detached from it that he doesn't know what rules to live by because the rules have screwed him.
Mm-hmm.
So he's like, why should I follow the rules when literally I've done nothing to nobody and I get beaten up every day for it?
Yeah.
What's the point of rules if what you were talking about, no law enforcement, well, it's not just the law, it's also just people being mean to people and just, you know.
Yeah.
When you have no reason for why you do things that would seem irrational to a normal person.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Mm.
And then
Still deserve to get fired though.
Oh, 100%.
You know what?
Try not to justify it.
Employers don't mess around with that stuff, and for good reason.
Yeah. And then later on, he's on the subway. There's the 3 Wall Street guys. They're there, and they're harassing somebody. And
Thomas Wayne, Wall Street guys too.
Yeah, and they're harassing a woman on the train, and he starts uncontrollably laughing. Then they start picking on him, and then they start beating the shit out of him. And then he has had enough, and he still has the gun because, like, you know, right after he gets fired, you know,
He's going home.
he's still dressed as the clown makeup, and he's on his way home, and then he finally has had enough, and then he just shoots all 3 of them. He shoots 2 of them on the subway, but then one of them gets off, and then he shoots him on the stairwell going up the street.
Yeah, got him in the leg, and
Yeah, he got him in the leg on the subway, and then he
Good
shot
shot.
him a few more times on the stairwell.
it's gotta hurt.
Yeah. Right? Just walking around, just bleeding out through your leg. Oof. Sucks. But, yeah, and then, like, that's what starts this whole movement. Like, throughout the course of the movie,
Like, who did this?
I'm trying to think of what to say, but he basically created a movement without actually creating a movement. Like, that was the whole thing throughout the whole movie, because I also noticed that when he was in the children's hospital, he's not as bright and colorful anymore. Because, like I mentioned earlier, in the first part of the movie, where
The grunginess takes effect.
yeah, like everything starts to dilute and all this bunch of stuff. So it's pretty interesting.
Just think muck.
Yeah.
He's just mucking up. Sorry, I lost my train of thought. The muck goes beyond just how he looks. It's the environment pounding him down to grains of sand.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then and then he was running down the street, and then he runs to a bathroom, and then he starts dancing. And
This is where you're supposed to throw up.
for him, so I've heard about this a few times when this movie was coming out, or after the fact, that like the reason why that Joaquin Phoenix decided that Joker would dance in these kinds of times because like he doesn't know how to express how he feels. So the way that he expresses how he's feeling in that moment is by dancing. And I can't remember if he specifically picked out songs to use or if somebody else did that as far as like the production team or something like that. But they would play the song and then he would dance to the song. Like that was specifically playing. So like the somber music that was playing in the bathroom, especially later on when he's in full Joker makeup, like on the stairwell with that song. I don't remember what it's called, but like they played those songs specifically when he's dancing and stuff, or like him dyeing his hair in the bathroom, like when he's dancing around in his underwear. Like they specifically played those songs while they were filming, and then like that was just him dancing to the song. So, but then there's him and the girl that's in his building. They're in the elevator together, and so he makes a connection with her by her putting a fake gun, like finger guns to her head, and then blowing her brains out. And then he walks down towards his building or his apartment, and he does the same thing. And so she like smiled a little bit, and so he goes like, "Oh man, she likes me." So, and I have it written down. Him and girl walking around, and she says the killing is a good thing, because that's like later on when they're like together, and they're walking down the street, and then they look at the newspaper of like the clown movement. Essentially, is what's happening, and so she says that like, yeah, like the killing is actually a good thing because like screw those guys. Like they're like pieces of trash and everything like that. So that I thought was pretty interesting, which we'll get to later on. So and then he gets home, and then he finds his mom asleep in the chair, and like brings her to bed, and then he sees that the note or the letter that she wrote to Thomas Wayne. So he opens it and he reads it, and then he finds out that he's apparently Thomas Wayne's kid, and that's the reason why that she's trying to reach out to him, is because like not that she's looking for a handout or money or anything like that, but she just goes like you need to help us essentially, and that's what Thomas Wayne wants to do, is run for mayor this whole movie, because he wants to make the people that are in poverty actually be able to thrive, essentially, like help them out and stuff like that, like get them the programs that they need or anything like that. But then later on, I think this is like halfway through the movie, I think, he goes to the Wayne Manor to confront Thomas Wayne, and he meets Bruce. And then this is when everything starts to click. It's like, oh, so Bruce is still a kid. Like this is before his parents died.
This is before origin story.
Yeah. So it's like
origin.
You could literally say that this is an origin of Joker, but also the origin of Batman as well, because the events that lead up towards the end of Batman's origin is the whole thing that happens throughout this whole movie, being the clown movement and everything. So, but I also put down on my notes, like he goes to the manor, he shows Bruce a magic trick, and then puts a smile on his face. And I'm like, that's weird that you're putting your fingers into a random kid's mouth to make him smile, like you made yourself smile in the beginning. Stop it.
Yeah.
Like I was weirded out by that.
It was the true most uncomfortable moment in the movie for me.
Yeah, like it was just like uneasy.
Yeah, uneasy. Yeah.
So it's just like,
I know that Bruce doesn't think you're like the worst thing in the world right this moment, but you still shouldn't do that, bro.
yeah. And then
but again, the detachment of the brain. But
yeah, and then Alfred comes out and he is just like questioning him. He goes like, "What the hell are you doing? Who are you? Why are you here? Blah blah blah." And he goes like, "No, I need to talk to Thomas Wayne. Like I think he might be my father." And he goes like, "He's not." And then like he runs off and does whatever. And these So yeah, then he goes home and then he finds out that his mom is going to the hospital. So they're bringing her out in a gurney into the ambulance.
No idea why that happened at that point.
Yeah, and then cut to him being outside of the hospital smoking a cigarette, and these detectives walk up and they're like asking him questions about like what was going on and stuff like that. Not about his mom because they questioned her, and then that's the reason why that she's in the hospital is because she had a stroke because she started freaking out because they started questioning her about like Arthur and all this bunch of stuff, and because they want to know what happened at the to the Wall Street guys, so they're asking questions, and because especially where it's came out that apparently the person was either wearing clown makeup or a clown mask, so they are questioning people, especially for his line of work where they were working at the clown place. So, and so I have it written down that like they're asking him about his condition, and he goes like, "Hey, you know, like the laughing thing, is it true?" And he goes like, "What do you think?" Flicks the cigarette away and then walks into the exit door. So I thought that was funny. It's like I don't know if that was supposed to be intentionally funny or not.
I think it was only for the fact that like it's a combination of it's a funny moment, but he's also just like, I need to get away from you guys.
Mm-hmm.
He's like the very well. He also I kind of thought of this just now. He might have also just been like, the last time I felt these feelings, 3 guys died.
Yeah.
Like, I need to get away from you two because the very same people that are dead right now that you're asking about were also making fun of my laugh.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, I need to get out of here. I don't care this is an exit only. Open this door. Like,
Yeah. He goes like, "I want to be out of this situation like now."
exactly. Now that I'm thinking about it, I think that actually makes a lot more sense now.
Yeah. Yeah, and then later on, he goes to the movie theater because there's a protest of these clowns that are wanting to get to Thomas Wayne. Because, like I mentioned earlier, he's going for mayor, and he's not for this movement. He goes like, "No, I'm trying to help these people," and everything. And then he is at the theater watching a Charlie Chaplin movie that just came out. So they, so he manages to sneak in, and he's in disguise as one of the attendees. No, movie attendants.
Ushers?
Yeah, ushers. He's dressed as an usher, and he's trying to pick out where he is, and then he goes to the bathroom, and then Arthur follows him, and then he confronts him about being his dad, and Thomas goes like, "No, your mom worked for me 30 years ago. Like, I'm not your dad.
She was a nut job.
She was a nut job. She went into psychiatric care. She adopted you when she was working for us." And he then realizes like, "Wait, I was adopted?" It's like, "Yeah, you were adopted." And so he doesn't believe it, and especially when you hear something that you don't want to hear about something like that, it's like you're in denial. Just like, "Why don't you want to love me, Dad?" It's like, "I just want, like, you to hug me or something. Like, show that you love me in some form of capacity." And it's just like, "I'm not your dad, dude. Like, leave me the hell alone."
And he's also doing that. It's multi-tiered because guess who hasn't done that up to this entire point? Society.
Mm-hmm.
In some ways, his mom. With what we just talked about, how like you gotta be funny to be a comedian. Well, that's another way of not abandonment, but like you have to hear somebody to abandon them.
Oh yeah, 100%.
You have to be heard in order to be abandoned.
Yeah.
If nobody listens to you, do you really got anybody?
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then he goes to the mental hospital and to go and get the records of his mom. And
Yeah, at Arkham. Yeah.
yeah, at Arkham. And it's not called Arkham Asylum.
Arkham State Hospital. Yeah.
Yeah, which then would later turn into Arkham Asylum for the criminals of Insane.
Mm-hmm.
And he then finds out about her being in the psychiatric ward of the mental hospital and how he was adopted and how he was abused when he was a child And I also like the fact that it cuts to a flashback of her talking to the doctor and him in the room, like in the corner, to where he's like literally he can picture what's happening. And I'm like, that's actually a really cool detail that they threw in there of times like this to where it's like he can put himself in that room to find out what's happening. And especially you can still hear him laughing in the background because he's reading all this stuff and like he doesn't know how to process it, so he's just like uncontrollably laughing about it. And she's just so delusional that she doesn't realize what's happening, that like Arthur's being abused by her boyfriend at the time, and that she's neglecting him and like letting him starve, and like she's just like, no, he's such a happy little boy. Like she's just so delusional and stuff. And it's like at that point, wouldn't Child Protective Services just take the kid? Like, why didn't they just say, you know what, you're unfit to be a parent, so we're just gonna take him and he'll get adopted by somebody else? But
once again, the environment letting him down.
yeah,
The city letting him down.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, and it's like because, you know, later on he says that, you know, like nobody cared about him, and it's like, and you know, it's probably true. And it's like, you know, society never cared about him, and which we'll get to here eventually, like here probably in the next couple of minutes. So,
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so he goes home, and then he, wait, yeah, because he goes home, and then he walks into Domino's apartment.
Just Sophie's apartment.
Yeah, and he goes into her apartment, and he goes to sit down, and she walks in, and so she's terrified of, like, hey, I think you got the wrong apartment. Like, I think you live down the hall from me. And then this is when everything starts clicking into place of being like, oh, they weren't actually together throughout this whole course of this movie.
It was another delusion.
Yeah, because like there was a point when he got fired, he shot the Wall Street guys, he goes home, but then he knocks on her apartment door, and then he pretty much like makes out with her in the heat of passion. And then even before that, like he was delusional of her walking up to his door, knocking on it, and like talking to him. And like she wasn't there. He didn't go to her apartment to like basically start a relationship. When he was in the hospital with his mom, she was there, but she wasn't really there. So it's like, how far does this actually go?
Pretty far.
So yeah, because it's like, and then like, you know, we'll get to it at the end of the movie, because I talked to my wife about the ending, and it's just like, what? And like I said, we'll get to the very end of this, but yeah, and then especially with him like walking down the street and talking about like the movement happening and how it's a good thing. That's his own delusion telling him that he did good. Because if she's not actually there and he thinks that she is, that's himself telling him that like, hey, what you did is a good thing of shooting those 3 Wall Street guys. Because it's all like, you know, you started a movement, people are starting to get angry about the whole society that you're living in, that now it's like your power is escalating everything up. So
You are the arbiter of people's feelings.
yeah.
Or the harbinger of people's feelings.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then like this is what I was thinking about, was like he goes to the hospital to tell his mom, like, I found out about everything, I found out that I was adopted and everything like that, and then like he kills her with a pillow. And then I have it written down like, I used to think my life was a tragedy, but now it's a comedy. And it's like the big huge synonymous line throughout Joker is that whole line right there. So and then he was invited on the Murray Show because he went to the comedy place and he did stand-up comedy, and he was just awful. Nobody laughed except for him. And then another delusion where he was thinking that everybody was laughing with him about his jokes and all this bunch of stuff, but like none of that was real. And so he gets invited on the Murray show. So he's getting ready, like after he killed his mom, and now like his friends come by, and like the big guy, and like of course like the small guy, I think Paul was his name, I think.
I think so. And Randall.
Yeah, and I don't remember what the big guy's name is, but yeah, they go like, yeah, you know, like we're here because you know, like we found out that your mom died, so we wanted to come by and like cheer you up. And he goes like, no, I'm actually doing pretty good. Like I stopped taking my meds, so I'm fine.
And he starts just putting the cigarette out and a smiley face on the
Yeah.
the side. Yeah.
Yeah, and then this is basically now we're at the part of the movie where now the full Joker is coming through. Because like he's dyeing his hair, he's putting on clown makeup, and then they ask him like, "Did you get a new gig? Like, did you get a new job?" And he goes like, "No." They're like, "Okay, well then, are you going to the protest today?" He goes like, "Oh, is that today?" And they're like, "Well then, why are you putting on clown makeup?" He goes like, "Oh, because I'm celebrating that my mom's dead." It's just like, okay, so he's finally lost it. So, and then he actually kills the big guy because he basically screwed him over, because he said that because like the big guy gave him the gun, and then their boss found out about the gun being in the children's hospital, and that's why he was getting fired. And can't remember.
The detectives were asking him questions.
Yeah, the detectives were asking the big guy questions, but his boss fired him because he didn't believe Arthur, because that the gun was the other guy's gun, and he goes like, "No, you asked him for the gun and stuff, and then he gave it to you and blah blah blah," if I remember correctly.
But basically, the cops were going to continue to go after Arthur, and Arthur was just like, "Okay, goodbye."
Yeah, because the guy was just like, you know, "I want to know what you told the cops, because now they're starting to question me," and everything like that. So basically, he wants to save his own ass, and he then kills him.
Because he had a knife behind his back the whole time.
Yeah, and the little guy, he's freaking out.
The midget.
Yeah, the Paul, we'll call him, and he goes like, "Oh yeah, like you can leave." And then like he can't leave because the
door latch.
the chain
I was
latch.
both laughing and terrified about the same moment.
Yeah.
I was like, is Paul
Is he
gonna
gonna?
die
Yeah, is he gonna die too? Like, what's going on?
because he's short?
Yeah, and then he goes like, "Oh," he goes like, "Hey Arthur, can you get the lock?" He goes like, "Oh yeah, sorry," and he unlocks it, and like,
You were always nice to me.
yeah, and so he opens it and then he shuts it, and he goes like, "You know what? I want to let you know, like throughout the whole time you're like, is he actually gonna kill him? Like, what's going on?" And he goes like, "You know what? Like, you've always been a friend to me." He goes like, you can leave." And then he opens the door, and then he freaks him out, and then he like runs out of there. So I thought that whole bit was funny.
Mm-hmm.
And then of course he's now fully in dress as the Joker, with the makeup and the suit and everything, and then you get the big huge stair scene. That I loved.
A little elevator smirk too.
Yeah. And the detectives find him on the stairwell, and then they want to question him some more, and then he just sprints out of there. Like, he gets into a full dead sprint.
Mm-hmm.
And then he's trying to run away from the detectives. He gets on the subway, and there's just a bunch of clown people on it, and he gets away, and then like later on find out that the two cops are now in critical condition because the people just beat the shit out of him. And then finally he gets to the studio, and Murray talks to him for a little bit about it, and he goes like, "Hey, when you introduce me, can you introduce me as Joker?"
Murray, one small thing.
Yeah.
When you bring me out, Can you introduce me as Joker?
I'm the Joker, baby.
And he goes like, Joker, why? He goes like, because on your show he called me a Joker. And then like he has no recollection of him calling him a Joker. He goes, all right, well, whatever. And his producer's just like against it. He goes like, no, like we're not gonna do this. Like either he leaves or he takes off the makeup because like of what's happening out there. And he goes like, and Arthur goes like, no, I'm not for the protest. He goes like, well then why is it that you're wearing this stuff? And he just goes like, oh, like it's just me putting out my inner feelings and stuff. And then when he gets on stage finally and just the huge culmination of everything coming together of him killing the Wall Street guys and him saying that like it's a good thing that it happened and everybody just seeing his delusion of happening, where especially now is when the bomb finally sets off of him going like, hey, I actually have a joke. Because his original joke was going to be knock knock, and then Murray was going to say who's there, and then who's going to kill himself. But he ended up switching that to where he goes like, what do you get when you cross a society with a
Mentally ill owner?
yeah, mentally ill loner that gets pushed around and everything like that. He goes, you get what you fucking deserve, and then just shoots him. And yeah, that's pretty much when the bomb just sets off. And then riots happen in the streets. And of course he gets arrested and everything, and then gets to a car wreck with, I think it was with an ambulance. No,
Yeah.
It was a truck.
It was an ambulance that that another clown person took control of and ran into the police cruiser.
Yeah. And then he is dragged out of the cop car, and then he's put on the roof. And then, or the hood of the car, I should say. And then now we get to the Batman origin when...
See Joe Chill.
Yeah. And they're leaving the theater, which I read it was like, Zorro, it was like something about like the gay sword or something like that. And I was just like, what? But I know that back then.
Zorro the Gay Blade.
Yeah. And I was just like,
I saw that
I don't
too.
know
What?
if it's meant to be like the happy sword or something. Because like, of course, like back then, like, and of course now, like, gay is just a term just for happy. But of course, like, because of how society is, the society.
This was definitely earlier era.
Oh yeah, this was like
America.
60s.
This was 60s.
Yeah.
That was the last.
It was
era
like still
that
black and white television and stuff, and like like there was still Charlie Chaplin movies still playing in theaters, so and that was black and white.
I don't know what year Charlie Chaplin died.
I think he might have died in like either the 60s or 70s.
This was definitely one of his last films. That's why that
Yeah.
film in the theater.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because like those because like especially with that movie, especially when it premiered, that's when you can set the date for the setting of this movie.
Mm-hmm.
Because like nothing's modern, because like everybody was thinking that it was like a 60s era of Gotham, but I think it might be 50s or 60s era, because like I said, it's black and white television still, so like they don't have color television yet.
Because wasn't Thomas Wayne's father Solomon Wayne, if I'm correct?
I think so.
Because he was the judge.
Yeah.
And that was like early 1900s.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe even 18 when he was born. When
Yeah.
Solomon was born.
Right.
I'm pulling from my Arkham City vibe, like information right now. I'm pulling up
Yeah.
the web docs in my brain. I'm like, yeah, I'm pretty sure. Yeah.
Yeah, and then, but yeah, because then we see them running out because of the violence that is happening, the riots and stuff. And they run down the alley, and of course find Joe Chill walking down the alley with them. And
Had
then
absolutely zero chill, believe it or not.
Yeah, and then he confronts Thomas Wayne, and he goes like, "Hey, you get what you fucking deserve," and then just shoots him. Because throughout the whole iteration of Batman Origin, it was a robbery. But in this iteration, like I mentioned before, where it's like, from what happens to the Wall Street guys and what happens all the way escalating to now, is because of Joker, he created Batman instead of the other way around where Batman created the Joker. Because if it wasn't for Joker and for him shooting the Wall Street guys, none of this would have happened and Batman wouldn't have been a thing.
Butterfly effect.
So, yeah. Definitely a huge butterfly effect because of that. Because he basically essentially made Batman because Joe Chill walked down the alley, just shot Thomas and Martha Wayne, and left Bruce in the alleyway.
To be fair, it would have looked like a robbery with him ripping off the pearls.
Yeah.
So it still could have been said as a robbery, even though that was totally not the intention.
Yeah.
And the 60s didn't have detective work like we got nowadays, so
No.
Add that to the mix.
Right. And then he stands up on the hood of the cop car, and then like he has blood in his mouth from the accident, and then like he just draws a smile on his face with his blood. And then he and then you find him in the psychiatric ward where he's just laughing. And then it's like the doctor is asking him like, what's so funny? And so he goes like, I thought of a joke. And she says, do you want to tell it to me? And he goes like, you want to get it? So with that, it's like, okay, did the whole plot of this movie actually happen? Or was it just in his head? Like that, like when me and my wife left the theater and we were driving home, that was the biggest question that we had, was like, okay, was the events that happened throughout the movie actually real? Or were they just a delusion in his head? Because we've already found out that he can have pretty powerful delusions that he thinks that have happened, that have actually happened. So.
Well, then he walks out of that room with
Mhm.
blood on his feet, which basically means he killed his interviewer, is how
Yeah.
I interpreted that.
Because I don't remember if that was the same woman that was playing the woman in the beginning.
I can't confirm that, but I would not be shocked if it was the same woman.
Yep.
But to be honest, it's kind of irrelevant, whoever it is, because at this point, why should he care about what any of these people say or do? Because they're just a part of the same system that's failed him up to this point.
Yeah.
The excuses he gave when he was shooting Murray.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then that's pretty much how it ends.
Mhm.
Because like he walks down the hallway with blood on his shoes, and then he is running away from orderlies. So and then the end pops up. But I haven't seen Joker fully Folie à Deux. You haven't seen it either. So especially where the huge thing about the movie is that he's still in Arkham mental hospital and he's on trial. But it's like, okay, since I haven't seen it, I can't say for certain that the events that have happened are real or if they're not. So I feel like that if they were real, he still would have gotten arrested and then he would have went to being in the psychiatric facility. So I don't know.
We're probably going to watch that one. That's going to be probably one of our first ones that we actually watch at the same time, which will be kind of exciting. We haven't actually sat down and watched
A movie.
a movie in particular, especially one that neither of us have seen. So,
Yeah.
and I've heard mixed reviews about. I've heard both sides. I've heard some people say it's pretty good. I've heard some people say it's horrible.
Yeah.
We're gonna find out.
Yeah, because I remember originally people were saying that it was like a musical, but it just turns out that it's not a musical. It's just a jukebox movie, to where it's like, yes, they will just like pop in singing and stuff during certain scenes, but otherwise it's like, okay, it's not just like unprompted singing. It's like something happens, I guess, and then they play the jukebox song and then they start singing it and doing stuff. So, but it definitely, just looking at the trailers, it definitely seems like that he still has his delusions. So, and Harley is also matching his delusions, so now they're both a part of the delusion. So, I don't know. It'll be really interesting to see what the story is. Because, like, even for me, I have been playing Suicide Squad, Kill the Justice League, and I have heard ever since it came out that the game was trash. It was horrible. It's a looter shooter. And it's like, okay, well, I'll buy it because it's on sale, for one. 2, I wanted to see the story about it specifically, and it's all like, sure, I'd love to play as a Suicide Squad member and kill the Justice League. Like, that sounds pretty fun. But yeah, so far it's okay. Like, take it or leave it, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
So, but yes, it is the end of the Joker, and with that being said, we will give our consensus now on whether we think that it's a rent, buy, or a skip. So, would you like to go first?
I would. I'm
Okay.
going to put this as a hard rent.
Okay.
I mean, it's alright, like...
It was a tough decision because I did like this movie a lot, but kind of like what you said earlier, it's not something that I feel like I would need to see a dozen times to remember everything that goes on in the movie. If I would come back, I would come more for the aesthetic of what it brought, or how it represented certain character traits, or just the overall way the plot was presented and the atmosphere was put in.
Yeah.
And so for me, for that reason, and those reasons I stated, I would say it's more of a rent.
Yeah, for sure.
Solid rent.
Yeah. Even though I bought it and I have it on Steelbook, I would also have to agree, because like it's borderline buy and it's borderline rent for me. Because of course I bought it, but at the time I was just like, yeah, it's a really good movie, so I'm gonna buy it. And I've talked about this before on the podcast, where it's all like, having time and setting definitely sets your mood for a movie, and like especially going to the theater and watching it. So like for me, I really liked this movie when it first came out in theaters, and then I watched it again. I'm like, no, the movie's still good, but it's like I wouldn't buy it though again.
Like it showed you everything you needed to see in the one time that you saw it.
Mhm. Yeah, it's still memorable enough to where it's just like, you don't remember all of the
Fine.
small bits that happen throughout the movie, but you still remember what happens in the movie though.
You remember enough.
Yeah, like you remember enough of the big stuff that happens. So like, him wearing the Joker makeup, him killing Murray, him killing the Wall Street guys, like all of that stuff leading up.
Delusional about Sophie.
Yeah.
That one kind of took me for a loop. I was like,
Yeah.
I honestly was kind of shocked when that one came. I was like, wow, the one moment of comfort he could have is not there.
Yeah, like the one person that was basically solid throughout the movie is just not even
It was
existent.
complete vapor. Yep.
Yeah. But honestly, my consensus is probably a rent as well.
I mean, it's alright, like...
So, but yeah, I feel like that we've got to do a movie to where it's like going to be a skip. Like eventually.
Oh, it's gonna happen. There's plenty of skip worthies out
Oh,
there.
100%.
We just haven't
Like,
we might run into it with Joker Part 2. I've been
Yeah.
hearing.
Honestly.
I've been hearing people say skip this thing. So
Yeah. So,
we
but
won't. We will do that.
yeah, we will do it
justice.
for you guys as the audience, so that way we will give our consensus on Joker, Folly Ado, eventually. So,
Yep, and if you guys want to put in the comments section below about just, without any spoilers, what you guys think about it, we'd like to hear that as well.
yeah. Yeah, I feel like that would be pretty good. Yeah. But otherwise, before we get to the very end of this and saying goodbye, I only have just like, no, actually, I do have 2 of them. Maybe. No, I only have the one. Because this is such a highly rated movie, I just decided to do a very low the thing for it. Review.
Low rating.
Yeah,
Got it.
low rating review on it. So I wanted to talk about this one. It was like most overrated and overhyped film of all time. The hype the movie generated did absolutely injustice to the film. The actor did a pretty good job, but the screenplay and story is too much boring. I don't know why they decided to say too much boring. I would have said just too boring. The first half it's bearable, but the last half really let down the film entirely. One of the worst films ever to get such a huge IMDb ratings ever. Wasted my 2 hours completely. I would have to say that The rating on it is still solid, like, because it's a good movie.
I enjoyed it.
Yeah, like it's a really good movie, and like it's very cinematic, with the artistry that's behind it and everything like that. But otherwise, it's like, okay, I can understand that the overhype for this movie, because like sure, like when it was first coming out, everybody wanted to go see Joker, because it's a Joker origin story. It's like sure, why not? But then, as the hype dies down, people are like, nah, it's a alright, solid movie. Like it's pretty good. Like, go check it out type deal, but not enough to like go and buy it. So, but, I don't know.
I think the movie is definitely of a bare bonesness, I would say, when it comes to the setup of what Arthur Fleck is when he was becoming the Joker. And I think a lot of people just want the end result of Joker without seeing the process of what creates a Joker.
Yeah.
They want to see the chaos before the things that make a person create chaos.
Mm-hmm.
They aren't interested, a lot of people I feel aren't interested in seeing, and this could be a symbolism of what our own society struggles with, is people don't actually want to care about what makes a person a person. They just want to see the end result of what a person does.
Yeah.
And that kind of is what the Joker talks about in the Murray Franklin Show interview, is he's basically saying, if it was me on the street, no one would give a damn, but if it was Thomas Wayne, you'd be all over it. They've already made up their minds.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of what I feel like people themselves do with this movie as well, without realizing it, is that they're doing the same exact thing.
Mm-hmm.
They're not looking at, it isn't the decisions that the Joker's making, it's the decisions that the society around him has been making for years that led to him being in an environment that led to him making said decisions.
Yeah.
It's the same thing about, like, we live in a society that's filled with McDonald's every 5 feet, but you go back 40 years, you couldn't find a fast food restaurant for your life.
Yeah. Like there's literal, like in some towns, there's literally just a street of a bunch of different fast food restaurants.
I mean, that's obviously oversimplifying it, but you get my point, is that
Yeah.
people are not just their decisions, they're also their environment.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like with this comment, that could be kind of the same way. They aren't interested in how it happened, they're just interested that it happened at all.
Yeah.
And that's not what this movie's about. So I can understand that overhypeness, because they're not looking for the process of what made the Joker. That's kind of what I'm trying to get at.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. But yeah, I don't really see their
No way.
points of like one of the worst films ever to get such a huge IMDb ratings ever.
close.
It's like, no. And like I already said, the movie's really good. It's a solid movie. But I mean, just for it to have people say that it's a mid movie, or that it's like especially for the time when it came out, it's like, no. Like, again, it's a really good movie. Like, definitely check it out for sure. But like, would you want to go out and buy it? Probably not. Not unless you really love this movie. Then you can buy yeah, for sure.
I think another term for that is just above average.
Mm-hmm.
This is an above average movie.
It's not a superhero movie. It's not a supervillain movie like Venom or Kraven the Hunter or Morbius or anything like that. It's telling a story, and that's what it is. And they decided to make it more artful because that's what they just decided to do.
That's not what
So-
you did there. Artful Arthur, I got
Yeah.
you.
And it's not a waste of 2 hours. I feel like that the second one might be a waste of 2 hours, because there's some movies out there that it's like, nah, don't even bother wasting your time.
The pacing was really well done for this movie.
Yeah,
in my opinion.
and like, especially for me, before I got into movies and before I started getting into comics and stuff, I watched Watchmen when I was like 13 or 14. And that's a 3-hour movie. And of course, when you're a kid, you don't realize how long movies actually are. I sat there and I watched it, and I was like, I didn't like this movie. I'm like, that's 3 hours I'm not going to get back in my life. And now that I'm like 30 years old, looking back on it, it's like, no, that was a really good movie, because now I have the knowledge of comic books and reading them and watching more
Character development,
stuff.
interaction.
And it's like, now it's like I could go back and rewatch it and be like, no, this is a really good movie.
I was
like,
naive.
I was naive at the time, and for God's sakes, I bought it. I bought the director's cut for $5 on like Vudu, which is now Fandango at home. So I bought it for $5, and I'm like, hell yeah, I'll take an over 3 hour long comic book movie that I hated growing up, but now I might rewatch at a later time.
Mm-hmm.
So, but yeah, anything else on Joker that you want to talk about?
I think I've pretty much hit it on the head talking about. I really do think this movie's about the environment that Arthur is in.
Yeah.
That made him become what he was. And
Oh yeah, 100%. And like, especially for him, where his laughing fit
Mhm.
wasn't even a medical condition.
That's just who he was. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's his literal.
His
emotional
literal inner
take.
Joker coming out.
Yeah.
So it's just like, okay,
It's a great example of like just be good to people.
yeah,
Like Paul's alive
yeah, because he was actually
because
a
he
friend
was
to Arthur.
nice. I know that sounds dumb. It's like, oh, we need to let it. Be good to people, man. Just
Yeah, if you take anything away from this movie, just be kind and be courteous to other people, because you know
You just
you
don't
you
understand
don't
how much
know
of
what the other
this
person
is
is going
not.
through.
You don't understand the pain and turmoil that
Mhm.
all it takes is one person to start that. Just as it took one person to start the clown movement, it could take one person to undo that.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
So, but yes, thank you all so much for watching this week's episode. Next week we'll talk about a new movie. But yeah, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe on our YouTube channel, and be sure to check us out on Spotify, because we also post full videos and audio on there as well. And also be sure to check us out on Instagram and on TikTok, because that's where I will be posting clips of our episodes. And then if you guys have any suggestions on movies that you want us to talk about, be sure to put us down in the comment section below. So, but otherwise, this pretty much been the episode. So
Mhm.
I like never know how to end these ever. So, but yes, thank you all so much for watching, and we will see you guys next week.
Peace.